We welcome you back to the Mark Bible Study, and we are, again, just about through, but I want to touch on one more thing in chapter 15, and then maybe just a little bit there in chapter 16 yet. But today, it may be something a little bit different, but I want us to focus a little bit on Joseph. Now, not Joseph being Jesus' father, but Joseph of Arimathea. And when you begin to look at just sort of the end of the story, we've already focused on how the veil was rent from top to bottom. And then you get down just a little bit further, and you begin to see in verse 42, and now when the even was come, because it was the preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, an honorable counselor, which also waited for the kingdom of God, came and went in boldly unto Pilate, and craved the body of Jesus. Pilate was surprised that he was dead already, and when he found out that he really was, then he gave the body to Joseph, verse 45. And he, Joseph, bought fine linen, and took him down, and wrapped him in the linen, and laid him in a sepulchre which was hewn out of a rock, and rolled a stone under the door of the sepulchre. Now, what I want to kind of focus on there for just a little bit is we can read about Joseph in other places. And Matthew 27, I believe, is where it tells us that he put Jesus in his own tomb, not just a tomb. Let me get the right verse here. In verse 46, it said, laid him in a sepulcher. But in Matthew 27, it tells us it was his own sepulcher. So this is where he probably expected to be buried himself. And of course, we know the end of the story, and we know it was only alone for just 3 days. But at least in some measure, obviously, people have maybe wanted to go find the tomb of Jesus since then, and so not that it's necessarily even was Joseph's after that. Maybe it's just sort of chosen to be for a place of honor and for us to go and focus our attention on what Jesus did. So more of a landmark now, you might say. But that's what we find there. But also over in John 19, I believe it is, that we can read about Joseph and how actually in the beginning he did believe in Jesus, but he did it secretly because of fear of the Jews. You can go over there and read that in John 19. And so even though Joseph started out maybe a lot like the other disciples, where, meaning well, wanting to do right, but maybe a little bit afraid to just step right up and be counted, when it really came down to it, he proved even more true than the 12 disciples, or 11 remaining after Judas had killed himself. But those other 11, they also, now we know John was at the cross there because Jesus spoke to him about his mother. But really, to a large degree, we don't know of the disciples being there, and we do know they all forsook him and fled, and I think we maybe have covered some of that idea at least already. But for today anyway, I want us just to think about Joseph here a little bit and how he stepped up, he proved true when it really mattered. And maybe I could just give you just a little tidbit for today along this line, is it doesn't matter how badly you failed in the past or how afraid you've been to be a Christian, or maybe even when it really came down to it and people were kind of putting you on the spot, maybe you were afraid and weren't ready to admit that you were Jesus' disciple. But it doesn't necessarily matter so much what you've done in the past. What matters is what you do now. And so maybe the question we could even borrow from Pilate, what are we going to do with Jesus? It's not enough to say, well, I just failed him in the past and so I've given up. No, we can step up now. We can make a difference. It was costly to him. Notice that in verse 46, he bought fine linen. It cost him also his time and effort, and then it cost him his tomb. And so it was costly to him, I'm sure, and it does seem like he was well-to-do, but it was costly, and yet he was willing to do what it took to prove that he was a disciple. You'd almost think this was probably worse than ever as far as the danger to him, because now Jesus has died. Now they very likely could be looking for others to get rid of as well. But in this case, Joseph stood up and said, I'm tired of, I'm just speculating, but it's sort of this idea at least. I'm tired of standing back in the corner and not being willing to say who I really serve. I'm going to step up now. And he took Jesus' body and laid him in the tomb. Again, it was only for a short time. We find out a little bit more out about that in chapter 16. Of course, you very likely know the story anyway, but hopefully we can get right back to this and wrap it up in maybe a couple of other episodes here of our Bible study. But thank you for being with us today. Stand up and be counted. It makes a difference when maybe the crowd is jeering or it's not popular. It is important to step up and make a difference for Christ and prove that we really do love and serve Him. God bless you for this week or for today. Probably try to get you another one very shortly here. But anyway, God bless you and keep standing up for Christ.